Hi, and welcome to the Child Anxiety FAQ podcast. FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions, and I'm answering your questions about child and teen anxiety. My name is Dawn Friedman, and I have been working with kids and families for more than 3 decades, most recently as a clinical counselor and the owner-operator of Child Anxiety Support, a program for parents of anxious kids. Let's get started. And this week's question is, how can I, as a parent, deal with the acting out behaviors of my anxious child? This parent is basically talking about a child who has meltdowns when they're really anxious, when the parent asks them to do something that makes them anxious. And it's got to do with some separation anxiety. When the parent is trying to separate from the child melts down. This particular child is 8, and the concern that the parent has is specifically when they need to leave the house in the evening and they're not sure how to do this. Even if they're leaving the child with the other parent, the child melts down, has a big tantrum, tries to stop the parent from leaving, blocks the door, drags at her body, all of these things. And she is asking how to deal with it. So first of all, I want to say I am sorry that you are having such a rough time and that your child is having such a rough time. And I'd love to be able to tell you, just do this, just say that, and it would make the problem disappear. But of course, like all things parenting, like all things anxiety, it is a lot more complicated than that. I would want to know more about the separation anxiety and how long it's been going on and under what circumstances your child is able to separate from you, especially if they are going to school. It doesn't say here whether or not they go to school or if they are homeschooled, and if there is anxiety in the morning when you're getting them out the door or dropping them off or getting them on the bus. So I would have a question about that. Is the separation anxiety more about in the evenings? I'm also curious about how you talk to your child about it, how much warning you give, how it's discussed in your family, and how helpful is the other parent in assisting you in getting out the door? Are they helping you by trying to entertain the child, trying to distract the child, trying to pick up the child and move them so you are able to get out the door? I would want to know about all of that too. If there are other children in the family, I'd like to know what they're doing when this is happening. And I would want to know how long this behavior has been going on. Has it been going on for the entire time you've been raising this child, or has this happened more recently? Is it getting worse? And then finally, I would want to know, what have you already tried? And what does it look like when you're leaving? What are you trying in the moment? And what works and what doesn't work? And what does it look like when it doesn't work? And are you able to eventually get out the door? So many questions. Why do I want to know all of these questions? Well, that's because one of the things I'm trying to figure out is your child truly being flooded? That means overwhelmed by anxiety. Or has your child learned that this is the behavior they need to have in order to let you know how anxious they are or even to stop you? Let me back up a little bit. Anxiety is about avoidance, and we are working on exposing our child to the things that they're avoiding, including the feeling of being anxious. Let's think about a child who is afraid of spiders. We would not take that child and throw them in a pit of spiders. Can you imagine? They would lose their minds. They would be completely overwhelmed. They would be flooded by anxiety, and that would be dangerous to do that to somebody. When a child is melting down, we need to know, are they being flooded with overwhelm? Are they completely undone by it? Have they been thrown in a pit with spiders? Usually that is not the case. Usually that is not what is happening. The child may believe it is happening. It may feel like it is happening. You may believe it is happening because you're watching them melt down, but usually that's not the case. If you had one day walked out the door and left your child and didn't come back for 3 years, and that would have overwhelmed them and flooded them. And then anytime you tried to leave again, they might go back to that place and be triggered to that place. So I would want to know more details about those meltdowns if it's triggering something deeper in your child. That's a neurotypical child. A child with some other neurodifferences, a child who, for example, has autism or PDA, which we call sometimes pathological demand avoidance, sometimes pervasive demand avoidance, a child who really is unable to handle it, we might see flooding happen earlier. So a parent leaving for the evening because they're going to go have coffee with a friend, if that child had some neurodifferences, we would want to consider that maybe that is just too much all at once, and we would want to look at what else is going on in the day. You do not mention whether or not your child has any other diagnoses, but that would be something that I would want to consider. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever leave the house again. It means that the preparation for the exposure of you separating might need to look different. The preparation on how you talk to them, preparation about how the rest of their day goes, a preparation for how the other parent or caregiver is going to handle it might look different. Now, for the neurotypical child who has not been traumatized by you leaving before and who is not in overwhelm or meltdown or burnout, a neurotypical child who has just learned when I am anxious, I explode in this way, that's something different again. It does not mean they're a brat. It does not mean that they are a bad kid. It doesn't mean that they are spoiled. It means they have learned the way to let my parent know that I'm serious about this, I really don't like it, is to explode in big ways. And we need to help them learn how to communicate that better. That is not going to happen in the moment. That's not going to happen in the moment. There's, again, a lot of prep we would do around it, a lot of communication with them, a lot of expectation, and then planning for what it's going to look like. So in our discussion, we might say, I know it's really hard for you when I leave in the evenings. I know that it's difficult and you really don't like it, and you cry and you scream and you grab the door. But I think that you can handle this. And I think when I stay and talk to you and try to talk you into it and you'll be okay, blah, 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 that I'm making things worse. I am dragging things out. So from here on out, I'm just going to leave. And your other parent is going to take you into the backyard or is going to sit with you on the couch and hold you on their lap because I need to be able to leave without you hurting my body or blocking the door. And then they would do that. Even if the child tried to get away, even if the child was yelling and screaming, let me go, no, I can't stand it, mommy, don't leave, we would go ahead and leave. And then when we got back, we would say, you did it. You didn't block me. You didn't block me in the door. That is fantastic. That's terrific. Basically, we are lowering our standards as far as what we're expecting of them. Like we intellectually are expecting, we're not expecting them to be lovely and go, Mother, I hope you have a lovely time this evening. We're expecting them to melt down, and we are not going to try to stop it. We're not going to try to talk them out of it. We're not going to yell at them. We're just going to not do anything that perpetuates it. So the more attention we give to it, the more that we're saying, keep engaging with me in this way. And we're not abandoning our child. We're making sure that they're safe, that there's another adult there who they feel okay with. They may not prefer, but it's safe, it's fine. We know we're just going to coffee, that we're not disappearing and moving across the world or anything. We're just going for coffee. And then we come back and we make a fuss over, you did the thing, you did the thing. What's really happened is we've changed. We've said, I'm not going to, again, engage with you when you're in this way, which is not like I'm ignoring you. How dare you? We're letting them know I'm not going to argue with you when you're crying. I am just going to leave. I love you very much. And I know when I stay and try to talk to you, I'm just making things worse. And so we go. And then we let them know when we come back, how proud we are that they tolerated that. What I want to explain here about kids who melt down and whine and yell and all of that is that they do this because it usually works. When our kids are really upset, we stay and we engage. We might be unlovely. We're not always perfectly patient. Sometimes we might snap at them, but we don't leave. That's the thing they don't want us to do. We don't leave. Or we drag it on. We drag it on and we drag it on, and then we leave. And they learn the longer I can yell and scream and cry, the more the thing that I don't want to have happen, the longer it takes for it to happen. So we are kind of training them, encouraging them, teaching them that the way to get us not to leave is to melt down. That's on us that we have taught them this. It's been unintentional. The example I always give of this is I talk about when I was a kid and it was bedtime and my mom would put us to bed. We went to bed at 8 o'clock and at 8:30 was lights out and we were allowed to read from 8 to 8:30. And then she would call up the stairs at 8:30, lights out. And what we heard was it's time to run back and forth and giggle and play with each other like we would run back and forth to each other's rooms, make faces in the doorway. And my mom would hear us running upstairs and she'd come to the stairs and go, lights out, you guys, I'm serious. And we'd go, oh, okay. And we'd keep giggling and playing and all of that. And then she would come to the stairs and go, don't make me come up there. I said, get to bed. She'd use our middle names, that kind of thing. And that's when we would say, oh, it must be time to go to bed. She didn't realize that we didn't hear lights out as lights out. We heard it as time to tickle and fight and giggle and play with each other. And it wasn't until she was angry and using our middle names that we knew it as lights out. She had unintentionally trained us to believe that there was this liminal space in bedtime. When we're dealing with anxious kids who are melting down, we need to look at those two things. Is this a child who truly is overwhelmed with anxiety? And I'm not saying that they're faking it. I'm saying, is this true overwhelm a child who is completely not able to function? Or have we unintentionally taught them that there is a liminal space between when we say we're going to do the thing that is anxiety provoking and when the anxiety provoking thing happens? Very often, the longer we drag it out too, the more likely that meltdown is going to be real. So not only have we taught them to yell and scream and melt down, but also the longer we drag it out, the more dread they feel, the more they get stuck in the dread, the more the dread feels so inevitable, and the meltdown is more likely to happen. I hope this makes sense. It is rather complicated. If you have questions about it, let me know. If you wanted to actually work on this with me, let me know. That is something I do, which is we create exposures that honor your child's capacity and encourage them to grow. Check out things on my website, childanxietysupport.com. And that's also where you can submit a question to me if you'd like me to address your question on the next episode of the Child Anxiety Fact podcast. Thanks so much.